ladies and gentlemen in the audience and commissioners and staff. I'm going to suggest, and without objection, ask that we cancel the public hearing. Any objection to that?
Today.
All right. Let's turn our attention to the agenda as originally presented. And the first thing is, let's bow our heads for a moment of reflection and prayer. Okay, thank you very much, and we'll officially call the meeting to order. Welcome all of you again, and let's stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. To my right, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Number 4 on our agenda is the consideration of approving the agenda. Mr. Town Manager, I think you have a suggestion.
Yes, sir. As a matter of expedience for the board's consideration and out of an abundance of consideration for those that may be hesitant to attend tonight because of circumstances, it's my recommendation that we delete from the agenda item 7, item 11, item 12, item 14, 15, 16, 17 to include 17A and B, item 20, 22, 23, and 24.
Is there a motion to accept the town manager's recommendation and consider that as our agenda for this evening?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Then the agenda has been amended and approved, and we will continue to follow the agenda as presented. The next item being number 5, possibly approving the minutes of February 11 and February 13th. Chair would like to hear a motion to approve both.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
There's just one change in the minutes on page 6 in paragraph 2. It says the board should narrow the perimeters, it should be narrow the parameters.
Spell check got it, but they haven't figured out syntax yet.
Good catch. Everybody understand the correction?
Yeah.
Yes.
All in favor of approving the minutes as corrected, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Minutes are approved. Public comments on agenda items. Madam Clerk has given me a 0 name list to speak. So we shall go to number 8. And Town Manager, Mr. Hewitt.
Yes, sir. I've got a attached memo as cover for the proposed budget amendment. That budget amendment is in effect a zero-sum adjustment that recognizes some $296,264 in revenues from state and federal FEMA funds that we've received that haven't been budgeted. As such, it requires no additional appropriations to provide for the following actions, which a couple of them require action later on in the agenda. The funds provide for the approval of the Martin Starnes audit contract, the replacement for 2 air conditioner units here at Town Hall, a generator set replacement at Town Hall, anticipated projected shortfall for legal fees through the end of the year, and a current shortfall in the new town hall operations and maintenance line item. These actions are enabled by recognizing that $296,000 in reimbursements, $177,437 were Irene funds, $97,000 were from Brunswick County for the Lockwood Folly Inlet Crossing Navigation Project, and $21,754 from the North Carolina Division of Water Resources for damage surveys we got from them after the hurricane.
David, if,
And
sorry.
And I was going to say, what in effect this does by recognizing these unbudgeted yet received revenues in the B part fund allows for a corresponding decrease in the transfer from the general fund over to the B part fund, and then those expenses aforementioned to be incurred in the general fund. So it's a zero sum. There's no new money put on the table in order to effect those proposed actions.
David, if we approve this amendment, does it automatically approve the items that are listed here?
With the exception of the selection of the Martin Starnes contract, yes.
What about the gen set replacement? We haven't decided on that yet either.
What it does is if you opt, it doesn't approve the action. You still have to go through that, but in order to do it, you have to set the chips on the table.
Okay.
For example, the easy one is the Martin Starnes audit contract. You got to do a pre-audit statement anyway. And if you approve this budget amendment and you decide not that you don't want to do, for example, the gen set, you can amend this budget amendment subsequently.
Okay.
Any more questions or discussion?
Yeah, just one thing.
Yeah, I guess,
As far as not reimbursing the B part funds with these funds, could you tell us how much money we currently have in the B part fund and the sand fund?
Yes, sir. I can get you pretty close.
Okay.
As of last year, or the beginning of this year, there were right at $3.5 million in the B part fund, and right at $3.2 million in the Beach and Inlet Capital Reserve Fund. We've spent about $400,000 of the B part fund primarily for the inlet crossing project. The maintenance project there, we're about $120,000 ahead. So if you, in the B part fund, so if you net that out, it's approximately $6.3 million of those funds combined. And one other point, the occupancy tax collections at this point in time is right at 97% in the current year's budget.
I guess at this point, we need a motion.
I just want to ask one more question, and I apologize for the minutia. If we have the gen set replacement coming up on the agenda, if we either don't make a decision on that or make a lesser decision as far as dollars, then we'll have to circle back and amend this.
If you wish to do that.
Okay.
So there, in doing this, there is no actual, not reconciliation, but the fact that this number for gen set may be greater than what is actually reflected in the report doesn't, it's.
In that case, you're actually going to have to amend this budget amendment because I programmed the midpoint proposal on that. If the board wants to go with the more expensive one, you're going to have to amend that budget amendment.
Again, I guess in reading, and I know it's not on the agenda, so this is my question. is it appropriate to discuss some of this for the genset replacement? Because I'm having trouble making the numbers match.
What I would,
It,
Number 10? Isn't it?
yeah,
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We're just backwards, I guess.
yeah.
But I'm having trouble making the numbers match. With the 209,818, I'm going through, and I'm just,
It includes the tax. There's tax in there, I believe.
I have substantial questions about the generator. I don't know if it's appropriate to discuss them now or table it to another meeting. But I guess
We'll do it later on in this meeting.
Yes, it's number 10 on this agenda.
I'm making sure we're not approving 209,000
Well, that's
for a
what I-
generator
This,
right now.
this,
what I
this
asked.
budget amendment provides for that discussion. And and what I'm saying is, if in this discussion for item 10, you don't want to do it, you go back in and you cut the money out. And don't do it. I've put all of those 5 actions in one budget amendment, so we wouldn't have to do 5 separate budget amendments for each one of those things.
I'm saying.
I'll make this simple. If y'all go ahead and approve this, I'm not gonna spend the money until you authorize it to be spent in item 10. If you don't authorize it in item 10, we'll amend it and take the money out. Or add more money back in, I don't know what you're gonna do.
Okay, help me out here. We didn't get a motion a while ago.
not yet.
I'll make a motion that we accept it. That we approve
Is there a second?
the budget.
With the understanding, if we don't approve it, it's gonna be changed, I can second it.
What we're
Yeah.
doing here
It's
is
just,
allocating the
yes,
money,
money.
but we're not appropriating
We're not
it to be
approving it,
spent.
yes, we're just allocating.
That's right,
Yeah.
that's right.
Second.
Okay. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. It's unanimous. Number 9. Who, Mr. Who?
Yes, sir, that's me. Let me flip to my page here. Every year for the past 4 years, the town has been paving approximately a penny's worth of tax rate on roads. There's a capital improvement plan. This year's section of road is Brunswick Avenue from High Point down to about 400 feet from Boyd Street. Those 3 bids were received. The parent low bidder is Highland Paving at $111,250. Excuse me. They've done work here for us before, have done good work, and there have been other projects in the area that they have performed well on. Right Angle's recommendation is to make the award to Highland Paving for $111,250. That money is in the budget, and the bids were within budget. And as a matter of fact, all 3 of those bids were under the engineer's estimate and were pretty well grouped. But the Highland Paving is the apparent low bidder and is recommended to be the recipient of the contract for the paving job.
Is there a motion so we can discuss and move
Can
forward?
we have discussion first?
You gotta make a motion first.
Supposed to have a motion first. Supposed to get it on the table to talk about it. Doesn't mean you're gonna pass it.
Normally, we try to get these projects done between Easter and Memorial Day when the weather's warmed up, but before the crowds get here for Memorial Day, so that's the timing on the situation.
I would just simply say there are many people that use that section of Brunswick Avenue West, and it has been a constant complaint and concern for several years. I would encourage you to move forward somehow with this.
Okay, so we can have discussion. I'm gonna make a motion that we approve this, Highland Paving to do the work.
Is there a second? You gotta have a second,
I'll
talk about
second
it. Okay, now discussion. Who wants to talk about it?
I spent a good bit of time on this last night, and we got one page apiece. They're not apples to apples. Don't wanna just award somebody when you can see noticeable difference in the numbers just by looking at them. I'm definitely not in the paving business, but you're either raising 6 sewer valves or water valves, or you're raising 7. You're either patching 2.7 yards, or you're patching 4.5. It looks like the resurfacing numbers, the 300 tons and all that stuff look to be the same. I'm sure all these people are qualified. The difference in the quote is very, very minimal. One says, is specifically Highland, they're not doing landscape and grading of any kind unless specifically stated. And the other one says they're gonna seed and mulch and level everybody's driveway flush with the pavement when they're done. Brunswick Avenue is in terrible, terrible, terrible condition. I've rode down that thing for many of my day for the last time. I just wanna make sure that these, and I'm gonna use Woody's determination of a scorecard, I'm gonna make sure that each one of these companies in front of something that I can look at are pricing this thing apples to apples, and they're gonna do the same thing, and are insured, bonded, and qualified to complete the work. I'm sure they're all good, I'm sure they're all qualified, but there's too many differences, in my opinion, to just say, give it to these guys, because they're just not the same.
Yeah, I agree with you. I look at the pages and I'm sitting here going, how do I know that each 3 of them bid on the same work?
Well, they were provided with a statement of work to do that. Now, whatever they turn back in, is what they turn back in.
Highland specifically says they're not doing landscape and grading, every item's not included, it specifically states it, that they're not gonna do it. And then some of the other guys, specifically Barnhill, says they're gonna backfill to grade existing stone in the driveways flush with the new pavement and seed and mulch on the shoulders. So, one you're considering just giving it to, completely left it out. Barnhill's got it. I don't have a breakdown on Barnhill. This is just like a summary. I don't see the broken down items like I do everybody else. My main concern in the end of this is that road is fixed. Absolutely perfect. We've had enough of it. We've all had enough of Brunswick Avenue, period. It's in bad, bad shape. And it looks to me, just from the information that I was provided, that Southern Asphalt has the edge on this. And it's just for me looking at it. Like I said, I'm not in the business. It's just my opinion.
I will point out that the board is not under the obligation to accept the low bidder. You are, what you are authorized to do is to accept the most responsive bid. And if your evaluation of those, if you were to say, well, we think that Barnhill is the most responsive bid, even though it's the highest one, you can do that. It's your determination.
There's just not enough information on what I was provided on Barnhill to make the call with Barnhill. It's too vague. I mean, is there page 2 or?
Nope, that's what we got.
That's what you got. Well, based on that, I mean,
But what oil's been doing the past couple of weeks, you know?
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Price of oil going down is an indication. is
With
that
the price of
prices might get
oil
better.
going down, you know what I'm saying, like it's been doing for the last 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, how old is this bid and what would it do to go and look, look at it again?
We accepted bids through, I want to say that February the 12th was the Friday. And so
Right.
2 of these are dated February the 11th, and the other one's dated February the 12th. And like I said, normally,
Lots happened in 30 days.
well, we bid it so
I
that
understand. I
it
understand.
hits in February.
How
so-
hard would it be to rebid?
It's not hard at all to
Yeah.
rebid. I just
We
don't
are
know
tough.
if the world is going to allow for that to get it done before the time frame between April and Memorial Day. I don't know.
And we need to get it done.
I mean, I actually had looked at all of these too, and I looked at Highland versus Southern Asphalt, and I also felt that some of the things that Southern Asphalt said they were going to do at $250 more in terms of the total cost were things that were specifically items not included by Highland, so I thought, well, then if we asked for Highland to do them, then it's gonna cost more. So for $250, again, I don't know all the details, because this is as much as we have. But I would actually, from this perception, think that it might be a better bet to go with Southern Asphalt. This is the new procedure for doing the wedging and leveling of the road. So
Yes, ma'am.
since Right Angle was the one that did that evaluation, wrote the report, I am assuming that they know that any of the 3 of these are gonna be qualified to do that part. So a lot of this then becomes what I just call the extras. And it just looked to me like Southern Asphalt covered more of the extras. And Barn Hill as well, but I agree with Brian, it's really hard with just one paragraph that says base bid for Barn Hill to tell the sort of apples to apples.
See, even Southern Asphalt doesn't state that they're gonna go back and fix the shoulders of the road and seed and mulch it, to take care of all that. Barnhill's the only one that did that. So as far as Highland and Southern, it's not on either one of those, but it's plain as day on Barnhill.
I will add in that we've worked with Southern and Highland have both done
Yeah.
projects here for the town before, and both of them have been pretty good performers. We hadn't had any problems with them on any of the jobs that they've done.
Can we get them to add that to their quote? That they're gonna do that, at least that part of it that's different.
Well, we put if we're gonna go out and ask them to add something to a quote, then we need to rebid the project. If one has come in and you're basically asking for an upset bid, and that's not what the process that we used in this that went out.
Well, I guess a different question then would be if the shoulders needed to be seeded and mulched for an appearance sake, would that then become something that the town did? Or is it something that you leave to the owners?
Well,
Without being on the road and actually seeing what this, really becomes about, it's hard to say whether it's something that will be perceived as this is awful or.
I'm not so sure that some of the people that's got sodded yards are gonna want their yards seeded and mulched. And none of these bids, to me, would provide for that. Not putting Bermuda sod down
No,
where
of course
somebody's
not.
got
No.
sodded out to the
No.
road.
No, none of them would.
I have a question, which is raised from the bid. Let's see. From Highland, they specifically talk about insurance, not bonding, et cetera. when we send out any bid, not just this one, but any bid, do we require the contractor to indemnify us and to list us as additional insured on their insurance contracts?
Yes.
So despite the fact that they talk about not being bonded, we would go to their insurance carrier if there was a claim that somebody made looking for defense and indemnification?
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I mean, my question is we should, as an entity, demand that anybody who's gonna do work for us indemnify us in the contract and list us as an additional insured, so that we get that protection and we don't have to do it on our insurance policy.
No, I'm sorry. Heather's just pointing out to me that the specifications are covered here, addressing the shoulder treatment, includes herbicide treatment, shoulder renovation, reconstructing driveways, full depth patching, placement of base course stone, compacting, wedge leveling, asphalt pavement overlay, marking, and striping. Contractor also grades, seeds, mulches all existing shoulder grades to meet the new pavement. Full depth patching sections shall be 2-inch S 9.5A super pave asphalt overlay onto a 6-inch ABC base course. Overlays shall be 1.5-inch S 9.5A super pave asphalt. So that's what they're bidding on.
So whether they put it in their response or not, they're obligated contractually to,
That's
all
right.
three of them are obligated to do it.
And yes,
As long as that's the case.
The bid document that Right Angle put out, and we apologize, Shane was supposed to be here today, so we called him off. But the bid document was actually 93 pages, so there's a lot more to it than what Shane was going to talk to that today. But that is part of what he put in his document.
As part of Shane's responsibilities to make sure these bids match up against what was,
Correct, he reviews them, and that's why, he did make a recommendation based on what they gave.
yep,
And he only gave us page one. We haven't seen the rest of the actual documents that they submitted to him. He only gave us the front page, but he would review them all before he gave us his recommendation. That's what he typically does.
so if there was a bid that didn't match to what we sent out,
He would tell
he
us.
just,
I mean, he always had in the past if there was any issue.
it would be deemed non-responsive.
okay.
Any more discussion? Questions?
Everybody happy?
Ready to vote?
Everybody in it? You ready to vote?
I still am struggling with the items not included by Highland, because it seems a little bit in contradiction with things. That's the items not included, it just doesn't seem consistent with some of the things that you just read about.
Yeah, we're supposed to be included.
Yeah, so that's my reservation here,
And that's in plain
yeah.
English and writing.
They will be signing the contract documents, though, that include these the description that David just read, they signed those documents, so they'll be doing what they said they would be doing.
I just wanna make sure it gets done. That's it. That's the bottom line. We'll make sure it gets done. We'll make sure it's done right. And I don't want to come back in here and say, oh, by the way, they missed a water valve, or they missed this, or they missed that, so. I'm fine with it. It needs to be done, and I wanna push it on through, because we need to get it done.
I make a motion, we approve the contract.
already got a motion.
And I second.
It's already been seconded.
And let's vote.
Call for the vote.
Okay,
Call for the vote.
call for the vote.
Yep. All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, it's unanimous. Number 10, Mr. Hewitt, generator discussion.
Are we on 10 already? Yes, sir. Right Angle has prepared us a preliminary engineering report, and I asked Shane to give us 3 options on repairing the generator or replacing the generator out here, to include a potential relocation of that gen set. That generator went out on us the week before the last hurricane. Since then, we got through hurricane season with a rental unit, and Shane has provided 3 options for the generators. I believe there is a matrix that summarizes them all, but in short, the 3 options are to replace it in place with a sound attenuation cover around it. The next option is to place it on the little triangle piece of property right across from Town Hall here, straight across the street, kind of at the bottom of the bridge. And the third option is to relocate it underneath the water tower. And I've given those to you in opposite way. The first option is the relocation of it over to the water tower. That estimate is $265,650. The second option is $154,000, and the third option, of course, is must.
134.
I'm sorry.
Well, no, I think it's a typo there. David, you look at page 10 of,
Page 8.
I'm looking at page 10.
Page 10.
I'm looking at page 8.
Okay.
Total cost for option 2. It's
Okay.
$154,010.
And what I was trying to say.
The matrix has a error in it, typo in it.
Yeah.
And then the third option is at the same location with a sound attenuation structure on it at $197,400.
Has Mr. Evans reviewed that sound protection and approved it?
No.
For those of you that might not know what I'm talking about, the town has a sound noise ordinance, and within so many feet of the property line, there can't be but so much noise. So I would caution the board to be in compliance with your own ordinance, as whatever you pass.
If correct me if I'm wrong, it appears Right Angle or somebody went in here and did some sound data. And if say, I mean, I know Tim hadn't approved it, but at least it says that according to their numbers, it meets the ordinance, but I understand Tim's the final say.
Right.
I'm glad you brought that point up, because the sound ordinance has an exception to the sound ordinance when it comes to noise levels. And if you look at 92.26 exceptions, construction activity performed by an agency of government or equipment operated in an agency of government, provided all equipment is operated in accordance with manufacturer's specification and is equipped with all noise-reducing equipment in proper condition. To me, that makes this exempt from the ordinance as long as we follow the specifications and it's equipped with sound.
If the specifications meet the satisfaction of the ordinance.
No, it's exempt from the ordinance. And that's what I need clarification for, because, I mean,
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and it's a good argument, but that can, I would like some legal official.
I agree, but what I'm saying, if you read it, there's no reason to put an exception in if it has to adhere to the statute, right? It's an exception because it doesn't have to adhere to the statute. So the question that I have is an enclosure part of the equipment, or is an enclosure in addition? Like, what I'm trying to say is, that if that machine comes with a muffler or some kind of sound reducing equipment that's part of the machine, does that meet the statute, or do we have to get the enclosure? Because even in the bid, the enclosure is called an enclosure, and it's a different item. It's not part of the machine itself. So the question, this is a $100,000 question. If we need the enclosure, it's gonna cost us an extra $100,000. If we don't need the enclosure, it's gonna cost us roughly $96,000. And I think that that's a question that we should answer before we decide how to bid this out.
I'd like to add something in here, that, in my opinion, that this is a neighbor's kind of thing, the town and the property owner next door, that it's been my experience over the last 11, 12 years that when that regardless of what the ordinance says, if it exempts the government from it, in this case, it's a shame, because when that generator comes on, you cannot walk by that generator without having your chest cavity vibrate with the staccato of a big diesel engine. It is very loud, and I do not know that if in fact that it is a hearing issue and an OSHA issue with the amount of sound that comes from that. I've got a lot of experience with impacts to hearing from large diesel engines, jet engines in particular, and that's regardless of if it's got a muffler on it, that's as loud as anything that I have felt. It is, you can feel your chest cavity vibrating from that. So we can talk about the government being exempt from it, but in this case, it's right on the property line, and I would think it would be a shame to subject the property owner to that, whether or not that the government is exempt from it.
This is the generator that is meant to kick in when we have hurricanes and emergencies, when there are situations that basically the island's not open, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So my question is, again, if the island's not open, how is the neighbor impacted for the short period of time?
Let me
Runs
qualify
every
that.
Friday.
Well, but let me
It's
qualify that.
okay, that's why I was
Let me,
asking.
let me
Every
qualify
Friday.
that. Let me qualify that. When the island's open, okay, in a reconstitution scenario, whenever the island is open and you have opened the doors and you may or may not have power, the island is open and that gen set will be running.
This is on the table for discussion, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, I spent all day and a good portion of yesterday. I want this to be known in a conversation with the town manager earlier, this town hall is deemed a critical facility, and it has to have it. That's my understanding, is that correct?
That's my understanding.
It has to have a generator,
That's my understanding. You have to have an alternate means of power.
and it has to be permanent. Okay. All right.
Stop.
Go ahead.
Who says, who's telling us that?
It's actually in our hazard mitigation plan,
Right.
and the hazard mitigation plan identifies critical facilities for the operation of the town. And this board approved that hazard mitigation plan. In fact, this building has been deemed a critical facility before the lift stations were. It was deemed a critical facility way back. I mean, if y'all don't deem this to be a critical facility, then we need to amend the hazard mitigation plan, but don't expect the building to run in a storm scenario.
It's not gonna run anyway, most of the time.
Well, but that's what generators are for. They're standby power. It's just that realize that we cannot provide the service of a town hall in a reconstitution scenario whenever there is no power without a generator. Can't do it.
All right, now let's listen at the amount of times that we've actually needed. Brian's got all of it right here.
This comes from a meeting with Brunswick Electric Corporation. This is the actual outages on this building for the last 10 years. On 6/18/2019, the generator was off for 30 minutes due to a squirrel somewhere. 9/14/2018 to 9/16/2018 for a major storm, hurricane. In my opinion, no one's in this building in a hurricane. We all gone. October the 8th, 2016 to October the 9th, 2016, it was off for 22 hours and 41 minutes, also for a major storm. That was Matthew. The other one was Florence, I'm assuming. It's not listed that way, but that's when it was. Then it goes to April 20th, 2016 to April 20th, 2016. It was off for 1 hour and 18 minutes. Duke Power, Duke Energy had to change the line or something, and it said they cut it off. All right, 11/26/2015 to 11/26/2015, same day, it was off 49 minutes and 40 seconds. A lightning arrestor, ABC phase pole, that doesn't mean anything to me, but the point is, it was off 49 minutes. And then you go back to 2013 in June, it was off for 1 hour and 15 minutes. Unknown reason for progress breaker opening. And then all the way back to 2010, from July 29th, it was off for 1 hour and 27 minutes. For a total of roughly 5.5 to 6 hours, except for major storms. It was off for a period of about 3 days to this building. That generator, in the case of a major storm, will run about 40 to 48 hours on that fuel, so if you can't get fuel to it, it's gonna cut off in 2 days. Also, I met with the vice president of engineering at Brunswick Electric, so I just said, while you're at it, go ahead and pull every power bill to this building for the last 10 years. And I've given this to all of you guys, and I know it's last minute. The kilowatt average running to this building, the kilowatt usage running to this building is around, most of the time, between 40 and 55 kW. We have a 300 kW capable generator sitting in the back here. Their recommendation is that we should be somewhere around 80 to 100 kW generator, which would be a lot cheaper. I've also, on the back page, given you a provision to not have one at all. I called Gregory Pool, I met with those guys up there, they sell generators, that wasn't the vendor that we currently have. They can have a generator they can have a generator sitting at the EO, at the Emergency Operations Center, across the bridge, can have it hooked up to this building. He said in less than 30 minutes when that bridge opens, and this building will be back in business. That's a rental. I've attached a copy of the bill for a sample rental. This was rented in Florence to the Military Ocean Terminal in Boiling Springs. It was rented from 9/28/18 to October 2nd, 2018, at a cost of $4,600. So Gregory Pool delivered a generator to that site, hooked it up. The labor to hook it up's on here, the delivery charge is on here, the environmental charge, everything. I'm assuming it included fuel. I don't know that because it's not listed, but it was $4,600, and they were back in business. So my point is, if I'm having a huge problem with spending $200,000 on a generator that we're gonna use for 5 hours. And in the case of a major storm, I think if there's any way to do it, we need to look to an outside vendor to bring one to us as needed. And if we need to put this off, in my opinion, and if we have to have one this next month, then let's rent one and put it out there until we can make a logical decision on this thing, because it is a ton of money, and it's sitting on the oceanfront side of this building or over there, or doesn't matter where you put it, it's not gonna last. It's just not gonna last. I'm sure Alan's tired of hearing it, crank up every Friday, and, you know, if we can eliminate the whole thing and drag one in when we need it, or even if we have to buy one, let's keep it across the bridge and hook it up ourselves.
I got a question here on the invoice that you've included here. From, that would be September the 28th to October the 2nd. That's 4 days, 5 days, $1,650. So that's not a month rental, is it?
No,
Okay,
4 days.
it's 4 days.
4 days, okay.
And that's, I mean, if you had to rent it by a day, I'm sure it'd be a ton. But I don't think they're gonna keep the power off and forever. And this is just my opinion, but these are facts that I think need to be at least looked at. And if we have to have a backup for computers or anything of that nature, I mean, we need to look at maybe some solar panels and some batteries that'll get us by a couple days if the power does go out, to keep that information safe or records safe, or I don't know how they're stored. I mean, there's a lot of things that I don't know, and I'm not professing to know. I do profess to know that $200,000 is a ton of money to spend on something that's only lasted us 9 years, a little over 9 years. And then the other question would be, what happens to the generator that's back here now, and why is it so much bigger than what we need, and who determined the size of that generator and the capacity of that generator when it was installed?
That installation came as part of the construction on the building, and it was scoped as part of the projected overall occupancy of the building, full up, everything going.
Now, the group that approved the construction of this building, it was in the
Did that.
specs.
All right, well, Brunswick Electric, this is facts too. Their co-op, the town's a member, and they will come out here, they will do an analysis, they will do a complete, this is what you've used, this is what you need, this is what's going on, and if we actually do install a generator, we need to put the right size in. It's gonna be a lot cheaper, it's gonna be a lot quieter. Maybe we can put it in a enclosure. You're talking about a generator the size of one that I haul around in my spray foam rigs that would run this building, and an air conditioner, and, you know, plenty of other things. Definitely lights. So I'm going by facts, and I'm going by people that's in this business, and they're all willing to come out here at no cost to the town and provide you with that information for free. And I don't think it's asking too much to have somebody else put an eye on it. We're replacing it with the same capacity generator. I mean, that's the proposal, right? Yeah. I think we need to look at that. And the fact, if we could actually get by with having one drug in here as needed. I understand the lift stations, I mean, we gotta keep pumping that. Don't really have a question about those, but, I mean, you talking about 5-6 hours outside of storm events, and in storm events, is anybody here
You don't have to
anyway?
Well, I mean, the questions that I would have on that is can they guarantee the provision of a gen set on an as-needed basis?
Yes, sir.
when
He said you reserve it as soon as it's in need, they'll have it. As a matter of fact, they said it would be over at Town Hall, the Emergency Operations Center, available for as soon as the storm was over. They'd pull it across here, hook it up, something about cam lock thing you'd have to do or something like that to make it where it's quick connect and you'd be back in business. He said that was no problem.
Now, would that generator set with the lower kilowatt voltage, would it be compatible with our electrical interfaces that we have?
Couldn't, absolutely no way I can answer that question. I'd take an electrician or one of these guys, but I'm sure somebody can answer that question that was qualified. But like I said, the Brunswick Electric, Mr. Shaw, it's a service that's provided to the members, and town's a member of the co-op for free.
I think before we go any further with this, the recommendation, I agree with Brian. I mean, he has presented enough information that I would want Brunswick Electric to come out on site, look at the situation and make sure that, with Brunswick Electric, whether it's Gregory Poole, that they can come out here.
Either one.
And what you're saying would work.
Either one.
We need to figure that out first, but I've heard enough. I'd like to look at some of these other alternatives.
There's just one other issue. Since this is an emergency location, we'd have to find out whether having the capability of bringing something here would meet the requirements, or whether you actually have to have something that's permanently.
Correct.
Yeah,
So,
correct.
So that would be the first thing, right? If-
That I don't know. The
No,
critical facility thing is
I don't know
over
either,
my
but,
head.
but if we're gonna keep this as an emergency facility, and it does need to be a permanent, rather than something that you can get on call, then you'd have to decide whether we're gonna keep this as a permanent facility, or you can't use the one no matter what. We can get help from Brunswick Electric telling us what size and so forth we need, but I think the permanent versus the temporary availability type one is the first issue we have to have determined. And I would imagine that Tim could tell us that.
Yeah.
What the requirements are for an emergency facility.
I'm sorry, it can't hurt to get some more
No.
information. I mean, if
And plus,
if it turns out we can't do it, then
Yeah.
at least we've done our due diligence on the others.
And we also look at, about the deal where, if we can change the status of the building. I mean, the emergency part there, that's why we have this over here. We already have that. So why do we need to double up?
David, is there a generator at the Emergency Operations Center across the street?
Yes, yeah, there is. At 1044, yeah, it's a propane generator mounted out back.
Okay.
Well, I think that's what Mike was saying. We need to go back and look at that hazard mitigation plan.
That's right.
See,
Does it hurt us in any way?
Hurt us
to-
anyway if this building's closed down for a week?
Yeah.
people can't make their tax payments and water bill payments, is that okay? You know, can't get their bill, is that okay? Are they gonna understand? We need to figure that out.
Yeah. But, I mean, you know, I think it's good on our part that we do a little bit more looking in on this. You know, $200,000 is a lot of money.
Well, there's
And
two,
it's
there's,
especially a lot of money if it's gonna just sit out here and be another rusty.
there's,
That's what I'm looking at, more than anything else.
the second piece of it is the location.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you want to do about that location? Because what you're talking about, regardless of if you decide to put one right back where it is, it's a different scenario if you move it.
Well, we may wind up, I mean, we need to do more work on this first.
Okay.
So what do we need to do to go ahead and get out of this and move on? Tell me. We need to make a
Well,
motion.
we've got a motion and a second, don't we?
Okay,
So I'm just gonna call for the vote, and you just vote it down,
okay.
bring it up later.
Hang on a second, did we have
Or you
a
can table it.
motion? We didn't have a
Yes.
motion.
We didn't have a
We
motion?
went straight to the
We did.
discussion.
No,
Well,
we
your
had a
chair
motion.
did
You
a
made-
poor
you made a
job
motion.
then.
That was on the pavement. Heather, did we make a motion on this?
I don't have a motion.
Yeah, we went straight into
That's
discussion.
why I asked if there was a discussion on you. Said, go
It's
ahead.
All
Okay.
right, I stand corrected, I
Then
did a
we need
poor
a
job
motion.
in managing it. No, sir, you don't need a motion. Without a motion, it just goes to the next item on the agenda.
I would ask if we do want to proceed with something.
You need to give me some
then-
direction on what you want to
Then we
do.
need
Give him
to
some
give
direction.
direction to the town manager. So what is the board's direction to the town manager? That's another thing we have the forum for.
So is that in the form of a motion, or?
Well,
And that's just part of your never-ending
We
discussion.
want to look at the other options available.
Yep.
Period.
Lou, do I need to have you
no,
removed?
this is one of the reasons we put the form together to make a formal request
Yep.
to the town manager so that there wouldn't be any confusion about what we are asking.
Yep, okay.
So I think, that being said, the first thing is to ask the inspection to determine whether or not you need a permanent generator in the emergency building. After that's determined, we'll have Brunswick Electric come do an evaluation of what size generator we would need. Is that the second thing we wanted to do?
Or Gregory Pool, or?
And we also want to find out about the emergency you know, if we,
Critical.
Yeah, I was going to say, we got to back up one step before Tim. I think we got to look at the hazard mitigation plan.
That's right.
And decide, okay, is this building going to be deemed critical or not?
Well, so you want,
But that's part
Yes.
of asking inspections is permanent versus temporary, because that's, the hazard mitigation plan is his wheelhouse.
Okay. But if you would, ask him to look at it if it is deemed critical or if it's not deemed critical. What's the requirements?
I guess justification for the classification is a critical location.
One thing I want to mention, and I'm sure with all of us living here on the island that you are aware, this building, if you shut down the ability to manage the air in this building, the humidity and so forth, if this building go in the summertime or like post-hurricane, if it sits idle for 3, 4, 5, 6 days, you know what you got in here? You got mold, and then you've got big problems.
Well, you've also got a lot of paper records over there that
Yeah, so whatever you gotta do to keep that mold out of here. Once it gets behind this wallpaper and in the records and all this other stuff, you're talking about more than $200,000 to clean this building up, put it back.
Not talking about doing without one, I don't think. We're talking about,
I'm just
The best
saying the
way to do it.
urgency of having a plan.
Yeah,
yes.
I'm not disagreeing on what you're saying, I'm just saying,
We hear you.
Okay, what's your pleasure?
Okay, so what I've got here is, Gerald, you said investigate other options available, but those were refined as asking inspections to check the hazard mitigation plan, whether the requirement's permanent versus a temporary application. The second piece of that is evaluate the size needed to run the building, whether or not we use Brunswick Electric or Caterpillar or whoever, to see, and that's the appropriate size issue. You hadn't addressed the location of it.
Well, that's the unknown at the moment, because if we come in here and they, just say somebody, Brunswick Electric comes in and they say, here's what you actually need to take care of the building, that it will be over. I mean, it may be like really small, no big, there won't be any sound issues or anything. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's where we're gonna find out from. But we're gonna have to get Brunswick Electric involved in it.
Okay.
Okay? And then we can, you know, we can go from there. You got a room or something, bro?
I think Gregory Poole actually had the most intelligent conversation probably with those guys up there. They, to shed a little light on it, they're not gonna be the cheapest generator, however, they can offer warranties programs up to 20 years. They offer maintenance plans that he quoted, like quarterly maintenance plan to come out and service it, and fluids and this and that, of around $1,500. They run a generator. If a part fails, it's, from my understanding in the conversation, if a part failed on a generator other than normal maintenance, that it would be covered under that warranty policy. And at the end of 5 years, reevaluate the generator, and you can purchase another 5-year warranty policy, and it, again and again up to the term of 20 years. But that's something, obviously, it's gonna have to be put in writing and all that stuff. But I mean, if we can get one, if we can buy one and we can get it to last 20 years, and we can take care of it, and it's quiet, and they have aluminum enclosures and non-corrosive enclosures, we might could just set it back right here. But it's gonna take a little, I don't know if it's gonna take a little time or not. Those guys are very knowledgeable, so it might take a day. But if we have to have one right now, I mean, let's get one and rent it and plug her in. And give it another month. Just, I can give you the information I have and who I talked to, and that's the best I can do.
Do we have anything right now? I know
No, it was costing $3,000 a month,
So you took it
and we got through the end of hurricane season and sent it back.
And I applaud you for that decision.
So, and that answers the fourth point there, is to do this other background stuff and go get a temporary generator in the interim, because it's gonna be June here before we need it. I mean, before we know it. Is that the consensus of the board to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. The fifth piece of that I want to bring it to your attention is that budget amendment was predicated on making a decision of buying something. Do you want to amend that budget amendment, or what I would propose to you is to leave it alone? I won't spend the money. I've got to have the money to get a temporary generator.
Can I,
Or y'all tell me what you want to do with it and tell me how much money there is in it. But the other piece of that is, I don't know how long it's gonna take to get this work done, how long we're gonna need the temporary generator. We're $20,000 in the hole right now on the new town hall operations and maintenance. One from hurricane expenses and two from those unforeseen expenses on that generator. So we're 20 grand in the hole right there, and that and anyway.
You said you wanted a generator here in June?
No, I was saying that
June will be
hurricane
here.
season starts June 15th.
I know, so you want to have a temporary generator here?
No,
for
right now,
starting
right
June.
now, right now, we don't have anything. So we need to do something
That's
in
all we
terms
can.
of an interim, basis, and that would resemble whether or not we get something from CAT or, like we had set up before.
I think part of the investigation on the thing would be to I know what you were renting was compatible with what was out here. I think maybe we can rent what we're talking about that we actually need, or what he's suggesting that we actually might need. It may be a good bit cheaper. I think you can kind of combine gaining the knowledge for purchasing one out of, renting something comparable, so maybe
Well,
combine the
that
two
one that we
some.
actually had out there on a temporary basis, I believe it was 150 KW.
They're saying that we could actually get by with less than that, but they're going on numbers that I sent them, that I got from Brunswick Electric. So I'm not saying any of this is factual 100% by any means. I did the best I could do. I would start with Gregory Pool.
Have you got a idea of how fast you want this done?
Just like you said, hurricane season coming.
You say we needed it.
We just, and this is the whole thing that's got all this started. $200,000 just to sit there and get rushed out. We need to be as smart as we can when we spend this kind of money. If we can get by, we're gonna have to have it, but we wanted to do the homework on it, okay? And I think we're going the right route here.
So with
Okay.
that being said, we would want this done as quickly as possible, because you're talking
Yes,
about
I
the
think
need to
so, yeah.
rent
Yeah.
one in the
Let's get-
interim.
Let's get them out here.
Let's get them out here and get them out here.
And.
Well, what I would propose is that we set one back there tomorrow, just like we had out there. If it's $3,000 for a month, it's $3,000 a month. That's to get us 30 days worth right there. And then you can go through the issue of seeing how big a generator that you need. I mean,
Then we really
there's a
need to
point in time here where we don't need to be penny wise and pound foolish on setting up
Understood.
something to
We
make it
understand.
happen.
Yeah, we're good with that.
Okay?
I have sufficient guidance, I think, to carry out the wishes of the board.
All right.
Are we ready to move to number 13? Is that where we are?
Yeah, number 13.
Ms. Fennel?
Ordinance 20-06 removes the executive secretary position as discussed by the board at the last meeting. We recommend approval.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, are you ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. It's unanimous, Madam Clerk.
Congratulations.
The end of a nightmare. Jeez. Number 18, Mr. Tyner?
Yep. You got the slides up, Heather?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If y'all don't mind, so I can see, I'm gonna go over here and look at you, so I can talk to the slides too at the same time. All right, first of all, thank y'all four other individuals that are listed on the cover slide. Tony Schiavone, which I think y'all have obviously met all these folks. Tony was the ex-mayor of Pebbles some time ago, CPA. Mark Fleischauer, retired CPA. Richmond is the CFO of the North Carolina Baptist Hospital Association, I believe. And then Jeff Cancel is a retired senior vice president from BB&T that spent a lot of time looking at audits of major organizations like Visa, MasterCard, others like that. So if you'll, all right, so we had two directions coming from the Board of Commissioners. One was solicitation of bids for audit services. We approved that at our February 11th meeting. We instructed the town manager to send out bids. He did that on February 14th, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. We also had another direction from, that must be the points thing, right?
Sorry, I have this wall over here.
Okay.
Sorry.
We also had a second direction from the board, that was to develop some type of scorecard or valuation criteria. The concern was in the past, when the audit recommendation was being made, the name of the firm was just kind of thrown up, and there was no detail as to why that firm was selected. So, Ms. Pat asked us if we'd come back with an explanation of how we chose this firm, what criteria we used, and what the process was, and that's what I'll also discuss. We sent out the RFP on the 14th, the town manager sent that out late that afternoon. We actually had an audit committee meeting that day where the audit committee looked at the RFP that we had sent out last year for audit services. We also had a RFP that Granville County had just recently sent out that had a lot of good information in it. But lastly, these RFPs have to meet some of the criteria that the state puts in there also. So the committee agreed that we wanted something between what the Granville County did and what we did the last time for Holden Beach. David took that instruction, completed the RFP that afternoon, and got it out. David listed, or the town manager, advertised it in the Star News, also put it out on what's called a listserv that the financial officers in the state of North Carolina use to communicate with each other, and on the town's website. We also directly, we being the town manager and the town clerk, directly solicited several firms. Sharp Patel, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, S. Preston Douglas and Associates, Thompson Price, Scott and Adams, Martin Starnes, Goodson and Taylor, Berry, Paget and Chandler, Bernard Robinson, and RSM. And to remind you, RSM is the one that did the internal control review for us a year or so ago. Out of all that advertising, we got 3 responses. S. Preston Douglas out of Lumberton, Sharp Patel out of Raleigh. Sharp Patel is a new firm. They were the 2 main partners that were with Rives and Associates, that left Rives and Associates and started their own firm just in the last 60 days or so. And then Martin Starnes and Associates out of Hickory. We got those responses back on the 28th. Town clerk sent those responses to the committee. The committee reviewed those responses over the weekend and on Monday the 2nd. And then we met on March 3rd to rate the RFPs. One of the things we did was we went back to the RFP and we saw where there were 7 basic categories of information that was requested in the RFP. One of them being the firm's municipal audit experience, underlying municipal audit experience. Their peer review, whether they have participated in industry peer reviews and if they passed them or not. Their references, their reputation, their professional certification, education, and experience, their audit approach, their fees and their cost, and then any other considerations. So what we asked the committee to do was take these 7 categories and first of all, weight those categories in the importance of those items. some discussion, we very quickly decided that cost was probably the most important item, quickly followed by reputation and their audit approach. And while fees were the most important, fees were weighted the most, but it's not the most important item that we said, or the most important criteria that we said we wanted to choose on. So we had the weighted scores. We also, for these 7 categories, we asked the committee to rate how each firm did on these 7 categories, on a scale from 0 to be totally unacceptable to a 10, which was excellent response. So you'll see, if I go to the next page, this is an excerpt from the scorecard. If you look in your, if you have looked in your book, you'll see the whole scorecard. But we took the requirements that were in the RFP and put them into those 7 categories and used those requirements in those 7 categories to explain what the category was and for people to understand what they were rating the firms on. So if you look across, it's like, for example, the firm's municipal audit experience, weighted that one at 10%. The raw score is the average of the ratings that the 5 individuals on the committee gave that item. So if you do the math here, it comes out to be 34. So the average is 6.8. So the average of the ratings of the committee was 6.8. You weight that score by the percentage of the weighted value on that item. And then we did that for all 3 firms. So we went question by question in the scorecard. Everybody had looked at the proposals. We discussed them before we started going into scoring. And then each individual, question by question, would then rate how they thought these 3 firms did on that category. This is a summarized scorecard. I know it's a little hard to see, but it shows the 7 categories. It shows the raw score is the average rating of all 5 committee members, the weighted score. Bottom line, you get down to the bottom, and it shows you their overall ratings. Preston Douglas and Associates, 79.2. Sharp Patel, 70.1. Martin Starnes, what's that, 90.8. So the committee came out, with those 3 ratings, or those ratings on the firms. As you can see, S. Preston Douglas was the cheapest, while the other 2 firms were $24,500 and $25,500. Preston Douglas came back at $19,000, which all made us scratch our head a little bit. But then in doing some of their reference checking and in just searching Google, we up upon in February of 2019, Preston Douglas was sanctioned by the North Carolina State Board of Examiners. They had messed up a little audit and they got sanctioned by the examiners, and they did not admit to that in the RFP. There was a specific question that said, have you ever been sanctioned by a regulatory body? And they said no, but we found it on the internet. And then they also bid last year and said no to the question, and they had been sanctioned right before the RFP went out last year. So as you'll see, if you look at the scorecard, Preston Douglas and Associates really got rated down on reputation and references. So bottom line, out of the score, out of 5 of us that voted, we also asked the town manager for his recommendation based upon his review of the responses. Our recommendation is we go with Martin Starnes and Associates out of Hickory. They're a larger firm than the other 2 firms. They got about 50 so employees. They have 3 main audit partners. Martin Starnes has done work for the town in the past, as a previous auditor in the past. 85% of their billed hours is government work. They do currently we're doing audits for 21 counties, 38 municipalities, and 80, and for a total of 83 total government units. They have a relationship with the UNC School of Government and the local government commission. They provided us their current client list, which the other two didn't. Brunswick County is one of their clients. They gave us a list of 12 current clients we could talk to. They gave us a list of, 12 municipalities we could talk to, 10 current counties we could report, also talk to. Once again, they were the only ones that gave us a list of their current clients. So if you look at the last, if you look at the, items I sent you later, late last week on the cost, it's in your book, you can see the cost. Once again, Martin Starnes is not the cheapest, but not the most expensive. All things being equal, we'd have gone with Preston Douglas because they probably were the cheapest. They met some of the other criteria, but we were a little concerned about the fact that they did not talk about the fact they had been sanctioned by the State Board of Examiners. All right, any questions?
Looks like you did your homework.
The committee did their homework.
Okay.
I would like to thank Heather. She did tally all the results for us during the meetings. Right. Got all that put together. And David also knew a lot of these folks that we were talking to, so that helped a lot too.
That
So I need to make a motion?
I move that we accept the audit committee's recommendation that the town contract with Martin Starnes and Associates for the audit.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second discussion.
Oops. Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
No, you're all right.
The only question I have, did it meet the criteria of what we did? Was that what you were looking for in your directive to the audit committee?
It definitely, it did even more than I thought.
Okay.
So
Well,
yes,
sure.
that was an excellent job by the audit committee. Thank you very much.
Any more comments?
I'll just say that I attended the meeting as a citizen, not as a board member, and I was impressed with the thoroughness and the hard work that the audit committee put in. So I fully am in favor of voting for this firm.
I'm gonna chime in with something just because it'll make me feel better by saying it.
I know what's coming.
Mr. Hewitt, you correct me, help me make sure I say this correctly. We are now looking at twice what we used to pay. And I can't help but believe one of the reasons, if not the primary reason, that we are now going to have the pleasure of paying twice as much as in the past is because the town established a new rate whenever the potential companies saw what we had been paid in the past. They said, well, if they paid this last year, they'll, you know, that's probably where our bid offer price should be. So,
I did fail to mention, I apologize. This is $5,000 less, $6,000 less than what we paid last year. But to your point.
don't get me started beyond that because it was a nightmare.
I understand. I'm just saying that we are, compared to last year, it's
Yeah,
cheaper. But
yeah,
you're
compared to
right.
last year, you're right.
You are right, compared to 4 or 5 years ago,
Yeah.
we're paying a lot more.
Yeah, so anyway, I feel better just by pointing out that prices jumped a bunch. But it sounds like everybody's done a good job, and I'm happy with these people too. So. All right, you ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. It's unanimous, Madam Clerk. Assistant Town Manager Ferguson.
Lawrence and Michael worksheets approved from FEMA. That starts our monthly reporting process, so the town has to turn in a report on each storm before the 10th of each month. In so doing, we need to adopt budgets for each storm in order to house those associated expenses and reimbursements. The proposed budget amendment will satisfy initial capital programming requirements, and the staff is recommending approval. The suggested motion is on your memo.
Would anybody like to make that motion?
I move we approve ordinance 2008, amending ordinance 1910, revenues and appropriations ordinance for fiscal year 2019 and 2020, amendment number 11.
Looking for a second.
Second.
All right, discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. It's unanimous. Thank you. Ms. Ferguson? Town Clerk Fennel.
We have received the updated processing fees assessed by Waste Industries for people who utilize the voluntary curbside recycling program. The monthly rate has increased by 77 cents per cart per month for the biweekly recycling, and $1.54 per month per weekly recycling, which is June through September. They tie that price to best negotiated agreements with the local processors. The annual 2020 cost for people participating in the program will be $93.29. The fee schedule needs to be amended to reflect the new amount, and staff recommends the board approve resolution 2002. If you wish to continue with curbside recycling.
What's your pleasure, Commissioners?
I'll move that we approve the motion, the new ordinance and fees.
Okay, Mr. Tyner, second. Floor is open for discussion.
Just a question, Heather. Do we have any indication if they're going to have any more changes in what is and isn't recyclable like happened about a year ago?
They have not provided us with that information, no.
Okay.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. It's unanimous. We're going to number 25, public comments. I guess, Mr. Hewitt, it's okay for the audience to speak, if anybody wants to speak to an agenda item?
Jim,
Any
well, it's
item.
on general items, but
Any
if
item.
it's an agenda item, they will speak.
All right, anything you want to talk about? Agenda or otherwise, whatever you want to say about anything, on the agenda or not on the agenda.
Nope.
All right.
I do have one that was sent in since we made the request that people send them in if they couldn't attend the meeting, so we had one that asked to be read.
You want to read that?
Sure.
It's from Dean Thomas. Mr. Thomas is actually a member of our Inlet and Beach Protection Board. It's to Heather. Hello, hope all is well. Have a comment question for tonight's meeting. If still time to add to the agenda pertains to the coronavirus. First of all, thanks in advance to town staff and commissioners for doing what they can to keep us as safe as possible in the face of the coronavirus pandemic event. I read recently that up in the Outer Banks, local officials are curtailing visitors to help prevent spread of the disease as well as help minimize overloading the local health systems. Do you think this is something Holden Beach should follow suit on?
Okay. Anyone else? Last call for comments. We'll now go to number 26 on the amended agenda, and at this time, the chair will entertain a motion to go into executive session. And Madam Clerk, you want to read that?
Yes. Executive session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318-1185 to establish or instruct staff or agent concerning the negotiation of the price or terms
Okay, so motion will go into executive session.
Make the motion, we go into executive session.
Second?
Second.
Mr. Brown? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. We are going into executive session, and Mr. Hewitt?
Yes, sir. Just for the public's knowledge, the executive session is going to be held here in this room tonight, so y'all are gonna have to vacate the room.